the actions that you do when you're unmotivated speak more than the actions you do when you are motivated. It is. It's really tough to do. If we can be riding when we're 60, 70, 80, that's my goal.
This is the Valley Rally Podcast. All right, everybody. Welcome to, I guess this would be our inaugural video podcast. I'm here with Steve from Thrash Motoco, fresh from his dip in the ocean. His number, 28 today out of 30?
Yeah, it's 28, but going smooth. I like it.
Yeah.
It's tough, but
burning the coal for the last 30 days, which is kind of your thing this time of year.
Yep.
And everybody looks at you and it's like, holy shit, this guy's a savage. But it's awesome that you do it, man. It shows everybody what you can achieve when you just kind of set your mind to it and, suck it up. So it's awesome. Yeah.
No, to me, it's a test of discipline is all it is. It's not meant to, really prove a point or hurt myself. But I like to make sure that at least once a year, I know that I can still, check myself and make sure that my mind is stronger than my body is kind of the whole point. And I think we lose touch with that over time when we aren't being challenged as often. And I just like to make sure that I still got it and I still got my brain is in control. And I know that pain and discomfort is temporary. So I always do burning the coal around this time of year, like February, because of the terrible weather. I've encountered 3 snowstorms, and it's been kind of averaging around -10, a couple of days like -20. But it's been good, and it kind of sets myself up for the year of, what's that?
That's colder than it's been here all year. It's like, I think maybe it got to like...
Yeah, we've had kind of an unseasonably chilly year on the East Coast. But yeah, it's just every year, this time of year, doing something to keep my mind sharp, basically.
Well, and it's good to see because it's a lesson we can all use because, especially with what we're going to be talking about in just a minute, and getting yourself in shape, specifically riding. I mean, that in itself is a bit of a motivation, but some days it just sucks and you don't want to do it. And having that discipline to kind of power through. And and the thing is the thing that I love.
And
Go ahead.
That's an interesting point that you just said, and one of my core values is, the things that you do, the actions that you do when you're unmotivated speak more than the actions you do when you are motivated, because it's those days that count more when you're unmotivated. That's the difference between someone who is disciplined and focus on their performance and their future and setting themselves up versus someone that's kind of doing it only when it's easy. If you do things only when they're easy, you train your brain for that. And then when things get hard, it's very easy to fall off the rails and get out of those trends. So doing things in an unmotivated state are extremely important, in my opinion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's pretty awesome. And that's why I love seeing it. It's, maybe it defeats the purpose.
It also sucks.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, the thing that's wild about it is there's no real payoff for you doing this other than, demonstrating to yourself that you still got it. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to jump in the ocean and then I'm going to get $100 or whatever. Like, that's not happening. You're just jumping in you don't have no prize. You can wake up in the morning and just enjoy your coffee and stay warm. You can do that.
Yeah.
But you don't. You get in there. Good.
No. Discipline. It's all about discipline.
While I've been watching you on Instagram doing that every morning, Do you ever run into people out there going like, "What in the hell are you doing? What is this crazy guy doing?"
Oh, buddy, the best, the best was because so I usually am at there. I got two little kids, as you know. I get them on the bus at 6:50 to go to school. Um, and I'm out the door usually 7 o'clock, like right after that, to go down and do my dip on most days, unless I have something like really tying me up in the morning. But so not usually a lot of people, but there's been, as you might have seen, there's been some pretty epic sunrises that I've caught,
Hmm.
and um, it's a really beautiful spot just down the road from my house, like 2 minutes from my house. And I went out one morning. It was super cold, but the sun was just, it was one of the ones kind of midway around maybe day 12 or day 15. And the sunrise was just epic. And how I work it, the beach is a really long beach. And there's this massive, like rock wall. And every maybe 50 meters in the rock wall, there's an opening to get through to the sand. So I try to park my truck as close to that opening, but you can't really see what's on the beach from this side of the rock wall. So I'm just in the habit of park my truck there, and I run through the gap and do my thing in the water. Anyway, this one particular morning, um, I ran through and I'm like mostly naked, just wearing my tiny little swimming trunks, and I leave everything else in the truck other than my phone. Uh, and I ran through on this epic like sunrise, and there was a couple get with a photographer doing like a engagement photo shoot at like 7 in the morning just to catch the sunrise. You know, they're like holding each other. You know, maybe she was pregnant. He was like holding her belly or something.
Yeah,
And I like streaked across the backdrop of their photo shoot. I don't know who they are, but
that's
man, I'd
class.
love to see those photos because all three of them like turned around, not expecting to see anyone uh, that early in the morning. It's pretty funny. I just jumped in the water and did my thing and got out and kind of gave him a wave. So, but yeah, not really usually a lot of people that time of day
Yeah, yeah.
in
No,
February.
that's hilarious. That's great. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
let's talk about why what we're doing here. Let's give an overview.
What are we doing? Yeah.
Let's give an overview for folks. I mean, anybody who follows Thrash Moto Co. and maybe even Valley Rally stuff. I mean, we're big on keeping fit to make the riding more fun and easier, basically,
Yep.
and injury free.
Performance.
Yeah, performance.
That's right.
Yeah, so I mean, you've kind of you've really kind of honed in on that performance piece, which is awesome. And so we thought it would be a good idea to just kind of get a couple podcasts together talking about the key elements that we think are most important when considering fitness on the bike. And what do we mean by fitness?
Mhm.
So for
Right.
yourself, what's your definition of being fit for what we're talking about riding?
Ooh. Um, Fitness is incredibly subjective. There's
Mhm.
everyone's got different levels, depending on what their goals are, what their experiences is. Um, I think that as long as you can accomplish what you are aiming to accomplish, then you are fit to do that. But for those that want to, I kind of base all my training on three pillars. Everything I do is based on three pillars. Pillar one, injury prevention. That's everything. Um, Staying mobile, having healthy joints, and being able to take falls because we all fall on the dirt bikes fairly often, some more than others. I fall a lot, probably more than most. Um, so, pillar number one, injury prevention, to be able to get through that your season, whether you're racing or not. Nobody wants to be laid up off the bike.
Hmm.
So
That's a
injury
good.
prevention is huge.
Yep.
Um, Pillar number two is being able to ride for longer days. So you're looking at, your 8 hour, 12 hour, 24 to 48 hour, kind of anything from, OVR to, which is, kind of people are averaging kind of what's the average for OVR? Kind of like 6 to 12 hours or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fast guys are out there for at least 6, 7 hours. Easy, easy.
Yeah.
Like, if not more.
Yeah. I'd say
And I
like the
mean,
fastest is kind of six. And then,
yeah, I mean, keep in mind, we're not talking like straight pounding it for that much time. It's, guys are stopping and taking
no.
pictures, whatever, but there's still, yeah, a solid good
Yeah.
seven
It's
hours
still
of
a
work.
long day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seems like Rockhound Rally from Rally Connects Lee and those guys.
Yep.
That's a tremendous, awesome event too. Um, so anything from like that, or like even the corduroy,
Mhm.
um, you're looking at like kind of 8 hour days or
Yep.
so, give or take. So from that range all the way up to, um, like we always talk about the Baja 1000 being, that's your kind of 40 plus hour ride. Um, so my pillar number two is being able to stay on the bike for longer. And
Yeah.
that's what longer is, from like 8 to 40 plus hours is pillar two. So the performance around that.
Okay.
And then pillar number three, and probably my favorite pillar, is I use a hashtag on Instagram a lot that says riding when I'm 80. Most of us know Lawrence Hacking and
Yeah.
some like other phenomenal older riders. That's what I want to be. And that's what I want all my clients to be and all my friends to be. Um, if we can be riding when we're 60, 70, 80, that's my goal. It's my goal for everyone. So those are my three pillars that I kind of base literally everything on when it comes to Thrash Motoco and my business is supporting those three pillars. So
Yeah.
obviously fitness, very subjective, performance, very subjective, but that's kind of what we're looking at. It's not about being necessarily fast. Maybe sometimes it is, like some of the racers I work with, it's all about being fast. Um, but it's just being able to accomplish the goal that you want to. Like maybe you're you're capable of doing OVR, but you want to do cord or you want to do Baja, so there's a shift in fitness, or you set a new goal and you're getting fit for that goal. But it just comes down to subjective of the person, where they are versus the goals that they want to do.
Yeah, I would agree largely on everything you said. I mean, one of the things that um, I I will admit that I kind of don't think about specifically or deliberately, maybe the better word, is that injury prevention piece. And I think that's a really good point. Um, I know from, going through some of your training in the past that you typically start, like, I remember we had a conversation at the very beginning and you're like, you're going to think this is the most boring thing in the world. And the reason is we're trying to get
Yep.
everything, all those core muscle groups, all those the stabilizing muscles, everything, all those things that everyone thinks is boring. Like when they're strong, you don't look like a beast because it's not the pecs and the biceps and all that. It's all the underlying muscles that really
Right.
hold it together, and that's what that process really works at
Yeah.
developing. And when those are strong and when those are limber, like they should be, when you fall off a bike, you don't hurt yourself as much. So
That's
yeah,
right. Yeah.
it's
And
it's, it's
dirt bike is a really unique sport in the way of, um, it's one of the few sports that you don't want to be big. It's not like football or hockey where
yeah,
you want to pack on a ton of muscle. Um, we want to be basically as light and nimble, but still produce the most amount of endurance and power out of the smallest package we can. That's what I'm trying to build people into, like, because you look at all the best racers,
yeah,
um, Graham Jarvis, Billy Bolt, Tristan Hart, like they're small guys and they're very lean. Um, and that's what we try to duplicate because more muscle, more weight, more energy burning, harder on the longer days. Um, so it's unique in that way. There's only a few other sports, some Olympic sports um, like some of the winter sports like cross country skiing and skeleton, and those are kind of the same, biathlon and whatnot, where you kind of want to be small and powerful versus like hockey and football and rugby and the ones where you want to be big. So there's
Right.
some unique challenges there with programming.
For sure. So we've covered. So let's run with your three pillars, and let's break it down in terms of let's talk about this tonight and in subsequent episodes about like let's put it into terms that your average rider can get their heads around, right? So we've talked about the performance angle, we've talked about racers, we've talked about some of the pros, and why and how those three pillars kind of apply to those, but they also apply to everyday riders, but perhaps in a
Absolutely.
slightly different way, right? We're not expecting everybody to hit the gym and become, super fit like, the top athletes in the sport, although that would be nice. Um, that's not realistic for a lot of folks. But what is realistic
Right.
is, being more deliberate with your fitness, and maybe folks just don't know where to start. And so that's what these episodes are going to help people with. We hope.
Yeah. Little mini series. We'll break it down into some individual topics that people can gain a tremendous amount of performance enhancements without getting too far into like the science and the high level athlete stuff. Because to be honest, like you know, there's a lot of information out there. It can be really overwhelming and really confusing. Um, so keeping it simple, I've had vastly more success with most people because a lot of that, the really high end technology and science when it comes to performance and training, doesn't apply to 90 or more percent of athletes. That stuff is important if you're at that level, but we got to break it down and start kind of baby steps and work our way towards that.
Okay.
I do got to lead with, um, you know, I don't have a university degree in anything. I'm not a nutritionist or doctor. Any of the info that we talk about, uh, or any of the information that I work with my clients comes from my experience as a lifelong athlete, in a few different disciplines, and as a professional coach, a fitness coach and a performance coach. I've dedicated my life to the study. I love learning, and the development of knowledge for this. In working with the professional riders and how I can bring that to your non-professional riders, um, and myself as a rider and a trainer. That's where this information is coming from, which I think speaks volumes as compared to because there are trainers out there, with long lists of university degrees that don't necessarily have the experience in the sport. Um, there's a lot of really good experienced trainers out there, specialists in all these like nutrition and hydration and strength and conditioning, especially in the online space. Um, and a lot of them have the fancy degrees. And from what I see online, although they might be very good at what they're doing, a lot of them focus on using the verbiage and the science of all these fancy, like the high end degrees that they have, um, to kind of sell what they're doing, and that they know everything, and that's fine. I'm happy for them, and they're not even necessarily wrong. But what they often do is intimidate. They overwhelm people because a lot of that stuff. I believe that the science and the really advanced stuff is great, but at the end of the day, it only applies to a very small percentage of athletes at the kind of really top level. And it is important at that level, but a lot of people just aren't there. Most people aren't there. So
Okay.
those people get overwhelmed. And if you're cruising around the web There's all that information out there. You could get to the point where you don't even want to start working out or getting healthy because it's just too much. You don't know which way to go.
Right.
So that's what I see a lot. And we try to keep it simple. I'm hoping this series that we're doing is going to help with that. Um,
Okay. Well,
as a coach,
let's break it down a little bit.
no, go ahead.
Like we got we've just talked briefly before we hit record that we're going to talk about our first kind of element to all this, which is hydration
Yep,
and electrolytes. Um, but
that's right.
let's talk about some of the other ones that are kind of after that. And then you had a really clever analogy that I thought was great, um, explaining why all this stuff is connected and why you would think about this one first and not one second and the next and the next.
Yeah. Um, kind of touching on what I just said about the confusion and the volume of information that's out there. Um, you know, what matters is stacking wins. We got to like stack small wins to accomplish whatever our goal is instead of like chomping off too much. And to me, breaking down performance is to me it's like diagnosing a dirt bike. Like when your dirt bike's broken. I think we've all been there at one point in time. Let's say it won't start. Uh, I wish Jay Milne was here because I was going to tease him about not knowing how to work on his bike. But you know, when our bike won't start, we don't just start jumping into grabbing a scan tool and hooking up the computer or doing an engine rebuild. We start at the basics, right? Is the key on? Is the kill switch on? Is battery charged? Fuses? And for KTM owners, like bad grounds. Um, we work from the most basic to the more advanced. And you go as far as you want to or need to elicit the result that you're looking for. So maybe the top end athlete needs that sciencey stuff and all that really technical stuff. But every good coach that I know starts every program and every diagnostic of someone's performance with the same damn basics. And that's the same as your kill switch and your battery and your fuses, to me, is hydration, nutrition, and sleep. And we advance as necessary to get those responses because you literally won't get the results you're looking for without taking care of those in the first place. If you've ever tried to chase an electrical problem with a bad battery, you waste a tremendous amount of time to circle around to something that was easy. So
Right.
to me, when we're breaking down someone's performance, those are the first things I look at. And I think that's why we should start with hydration. Because a lot of
Okay.
people show up to the gym underprepared in the first place. They're malnourished, dehydrated, and tired. They are literally incapable of performing well in the gym or whatever time they're dedicating to their performance with those things, unless those things are sorted out. So that's why we start with hydration and then nutrition and sleep and then
Cool.
some stress management.
Okay. So before we get into that, let's cover real briefly the stuff that's going to come after that. That'll be in subsequent episodes.
Yep.
What would be so once you've addressed your hydration, electrolyte, and your sleep issues, if any, what would be your next
Mm-hmm.
go-to?
Consistency.
Mm.
Absolutely. The next thing is consistency. Um, Even some of the top, like I look at like NBA basketball players, you know, um, even pro level guys are in the gym doing basic back squat, and it's not a lot of real complicated stuff, but it's consistent. So you're going to want to design your life around consistency of getting a little bit of strength training, a little bit of cardio, some mobility, keeping the joints lubricated and healthy, and being able to move properly, and keeping those habits consistently would be definitely the next one. If you're looking for like if your consistency is then on piece or on point, I typically start people, or I recommend anyone listening to this, if you're wondering how to break that down just a little bit more, assuming that your hydration, nutrition, and sleep, stress management are on point, and you have the time and you are consistent with your discipline, I usually say a good starting point is if you had 5 days of the week to commit to your fitness or your performance, because we're riding on Saturday and Sunday, Monday through Friday, I would say if you could get in 3 kind of strength sessions and 2 cardio sessions, that the 3 and 2 breakdown, it has largely been the best place to start. And you can maintain that for a very long time, changing what you're working on in strength, of course, over time. But that 3 and 2 split has proven to be extremely beneficial.
Okay. So let's start with the first step in that process, which is addressing your hydration electrolytes, making sure that you're putting the fuel in and getting the rest that you need to make sure that your body is running as efficiently and, as well as possible. I know from my
Yeah.
own personal experience that I noticed a marked difference from when I would just go out riding, probably getting hammered with the boys on the Friday or the Saturday, and then Sunday you go out riding. You're a bit hungover, but who cares? Everybody else is. You got your
Yep.
back full of water. You're good to go. Versus
Half full.
half full. Versus
Yeah.
not doing that in the first place. Um, Having a good night's rest beforehand, but also, uh, incorporating, like electrolytes into your hydration. So like instead of just drinking straight water, you're drinking, you have something to replenish those electrolytes. So be it, some sort of mix that you're putting into your Camelback, or maybe you're doing salt stick tabs, which we will get into later, something of that nature.
Yep.
For me personally, because I was always kind of pushing hard on the trails, I found that salt stick was fucking phenomenal, phenomenal in like just not. I was never hitting the wall. Is basically what it came down to.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't cramping. I always had a little bit left in the tank. Don't get me wrong, I was tired at the end of the day, but I wasn't falling off the bike like I was before, and it made a huge difference. So
Mm,
maybe let's get into that. So from your perspective,
sure. Yeah.
where do we start?
Well, there's kind of a elephant in the room,
Okay.
and you said it, and that's cramps.
Hmm.
So, because people really don't care about their anything until a cramp hits, and then you care about everything, right?
Right.
Um, so whether it's your hands or your, we're not talking arm pump, that's a different conversation, but like legs, core, hand, cramps. So this is a pretty broad statement. Again, we're not going to get too far into the science and weeds of things, but all cramps and all pain is your nervous system, right? Your nervous system is what sends warning signals to your brain that either something's wrong or something potentially could be wrong. Like if you ever have broken a bone, like say you break your leg, you don't actually feel the bone. You're feeling the nerves around the bone
Right.
going off as like warning sign. Whoop, 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 red lights, something's wrong. Um, and that nervous system and those signals are actual electricity in your body. Now, that pain and cramps can come from few different reasons. The biggest two that we'll touch on of reasons of why you experience cramps and pain is either you've done something new that you're not accustomed to. Your body will start sending out warning signs to protect you from that potential harm. It doesn't necessarily mean you're hurt, but it's like an early warning device.
So like if
Actually, a really good example is the ice baths that I've been doing,
okay.
right? Like, I know that I go into the water that's at like 0 degrees Celsius. I know I'm not actually going to freeze to death, or at least right away. I've got some time, but my nervous system doesn't know that because I don't do it all the time. It's going like, what the hell? Get out, stop doing that, abort. So, but you can condition that. You can, like, the more you do it, the more your body understands that I'm not going to die doing this. So that kind of falls into a conditioning perspective. Like if you're not used to riding 12-hour days and then you go and ride a 12-hour day, you're going to experience some pain and some cramping. It doesn't necessarily mean you're dehydrated. I mean, it could, but that's kind of the point, is to know the difference. So if one way you can experience cramping and pain is through not being conditioned to something, the other way, circling around to our main point, is when you're sweating a lot, you're losing those electrolytes. And your nervous system, being electrical signals, to break it down like really super simple, and I'm sure somebody will pick this apart and I don't care, but your nervous system basically is having a harder time communicating with the brain as you've set out all these electrolytes through sweat. So it's important to know the difference between the two.
So
Is this
is that the mechanism
I've if
of a cramp when you're low on electrolytes? Is that your nervous system is having a hard time sending like proper signals?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
depleted.
Oh, interesting.
So using supplements like electrolyte supplements to replenish that is really important. Um, and the way I kind of look at it is there's one that is slightly more controllable than the other. If these are our two scenarios, either I'm not conditioned for this or I'm actually low on electrolytes. You can control your electrolytes by supplements. So it's in knowing the difference between the two, you can kind of take one off the table. If you're maintaining your electrolytes, like you've explained, using salt stick or various other supplements, if you know that you're drinking enough water and it is supplemented with electrolytes, uh, then you know when you experience cramps, this is a conditioning cramp versus dehydration or electrolyte cramp.
Right.
And I see a lot of clients and a lot of racers that they come to me and they're like, "What the hell? I'm drinking my water and I'm using electrolytes and I'm still cramping like crazy." And they're just so focused on the supplements and they start over supplementing and you know trying like all the witchcraft and other things to get rid of cramps, when in reality it's more conditioning. Like I can make people cramp without breaking a sweat doing a mobility session. Like you put someone into a position in the gym doing some various stretches, I can guarantee cramps, and I can even like oftentimes pinpoint where it's going to happen because we get into positions that we're not commonly in. We're not conditioned to be in that position. So, you ever get like a foot cramp at night when you're laying in bed and your foot
Yeah.
goes like straight out and your toes are like freaking out? So when that's happening, and it applies to like on the bike, or laying in bed with a foot cramp, um, or doing a mobility session, when that cramp hits, unfortunately, my answer is there's a theory of sit in the pain, right? Like let it happen because you have to condition your body to say, no, this is what we're doing. I'm riding my bike for that long. This is what we do, right? Or I get into that position in mobility training, and we, going back to burning the coal and the whole discipline, mind over body thing. This is where that comes into play. Of if you're riding and you're cramping, but if you are aware enough that you've taken care of your hydration and electrolytes, you can know that this is a conditioning cramp. So just sit in the pain. Definitely harder, like easier said than done. But that's kind of what it comes down to, is one of those two categories.
Now, one of the things that I'm thinking of in that scenario is some key signs to help folks know for sure where they sit between those two scenarios. So I'll take OVR as an example, because it is a bit of an extreme ride. I mean, you're out there for a long, long time, and if you're stubborn or tenacious enough to try and ride the whole track for the day, especially on the Friday, it's a long ass day and it's really hard. And
Yeah.
you could easily get into a situation where you've consumed 6 liters of water for sure.
Oh yeah.
Maybe even with
Yep.
electrolytes in there. But you're at the end of your day, you start cramping up and like, well, maybe this isn't hydration because I've drank 6 liters of waters, but you stop sweating like an hour and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the keys that I
That's
always
a good
go
sign.
to is like, when you stop sweating, you are 100% dehydrated. Like your body
Yep.
cannot cool down the way it needs to anymore because you don't have anything left. You sweat it all out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would be one way.
That's yep. Like I have a very good friend of mine here in the East Coast, Lee Murphy, and he's a professional ultramarathon runner. Um, this guy's running 200, 300 kilometers in one go at times. And when I speak to him about nutrition and hydration, it's hilarious because he's like, I don't fucking know. He just runs, doesn't take any supplements. And because he's so well conditioned, it's what he does.
Yeah.
He doesn't focus on any of that, but that's not for everybody. He has conditioned himself to that. So there's a delicate balance.
And that's a really interesting point that I love thinking about, is the dichotomy between the two, right? So you have the conditioning component, you have the nutrition, hydration component, but there's an ebb and flow to it almost, right? So like you said,
Yep.
this guy is so conditioned that he gets away to a point with not paying
Yep.
attention as much as maybe others would to what he's consuming. Like maybe he's like, I don't know this guy, so I'm
Right.
assuming he's not like a champion. He's not placing first or second or anything on these marathon runs, but he's finishing, which is a bloody huge accomplishment in and of itself.
He,
But like the pro,
he's up there. He's
yeah, well, okay, sure, he's doing well. I mean, and so that, I guess that, but it's still that interesting thing of like where your body is so conditioned that it's burning
mhm,
its fuel
it
more
is.
efficiently.
Yeah.
It's working better. But most of us aren't quite there yet.
It
So
is. Yeah.
we need to rely on making
No.
sure
Nope.
we get the good stuff into us as much as possible. So let's talk about, now that we've kind of figured out that mechanism, what are some of the things we could do before the ride, to prepare ourselves better for the onslaught
I
that we're to get into?
I believe that your muscles are kind of like a sponge. Well, they are a sponge, in a way, and that you you can't hydrate during the event. You have to, like, during the event, you are on damage control.
Okay.
You're trying your best to mitigate the inevitable. There's a graph somewhere I learned a long time ago when I was doing marathon training. was been about like 2012 or 11. You know, your body can your body can burn or like expel water faster in those long days. It'll always expel more than it can intake because there's a portion that you pee out. Your body can only absorb so much. So kind of preloading that is extremely important. If you go in, like you spoke about, like being up late with the boys, having some beers the night before, thinking, I got my Camelback, I got 6 liters to get me through a 12-hour day, I'll be good. That's not, in my idea, a good decision by any means. I think that I try to teach people the ballpark. Again, experiment with this on your own, but kind of like the 5 days leading up to a big ride is when you should be like very vigilant with filling that sponge with hydration so that you go into the event with a full tank, and then it inevitably depletes over time. But when you hit that wall is kind of different for everybody. So that setting yourself up for success would definitely be hydrating prior to the event. I'd kind of give it like a 5 day window before the event.
What are we talking about in terms of hydrating? Like, are we talking about drinking, 8 liters a day? What's a like a good average that folks can look at, pre-ride?
I say on a normal day, 4 liters a day.
Okay.
And if you're doing anything with like some rigorous movement, like whether you're going on a training ride or you're hitting the gym really, really hard, that really quickly jumps up to 6. I think 6 is, from a performance standpoint, kind of where you need to be if you're sweating a lot. But everybody, like even people that aren't working out or riding, like 4 liters is the kind of the benchmark for everybody, and then up from there.
Now, is that
And
would you?
then when it comes to supplementation, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, would you count? Because it's a bit tricky, right? Because we get a lot of our hydration from the food we eat. And or when you say 4 liters, are you saying, is that on top of your food intake and your coffees and all that jazz? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, coffee doesn't count, or beer. Beer
Or
doesn't count either. But yeah, I mean, like four. I wish I had my jug here. Oh, there. Hang on.
no, he's going to show us his piss jug.
Yeah, no. This is the Darren Rideout 744X
There you go.
water bottle. Just your standard Nalgene 1 liter bottle. Um, for like one of those before you leave the house in the morning, another one before lunch, another one before supper, and another one before bed. That's your 4. That's for like everybody.
Yeah.
It's the first thing that people say is, "Man, I got to pee so much."
Good thing.
Right? I'm just always peeing.
Yeah.
But
You should be
that's
able to.
your body's. We talk about conditioning. You're conditioning your body for that as well. So if you are drinking like 1 or 2 of those a day, which a lot of people are, and I get you to do 4 for that first like week or 2, yeah, you're going to be peeing a lot. But like your pancreas and your other organs will learn to absorb that and get it to your muscles. And over time, you will, if you stick with it and stay consistent with the 4 liters a day, you will notice your peeing ratio to go down, which is convenient.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
that's one of like the things for me is like I'm constantly in this battle with my daughter. I'm like, how like she comes back home from school and her thermos, which is like maybe half a liter, is like half gone. I'm like, did you drink any water today? yeah, well, I drank one of
Yeah,
those, and I'm like, well, you need to drink more. You should be peeing
yeah,
all the time. And
yeah,
uh, that was always been my benchmark. It's like if you're peeing a lot, you're drinking a lot. So good on you. But
yeah. It will. It does go up and down. I haven't looked it up in a while, but I'm sure if you could, anyone could Google like how often you're supposed to be peeing a day, and most people are well under it.
we're
Um,
chronically
you
dehydrated.
will when you go from. Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's our like culture. Coffee. Coffee is a dehydration device. Like you get dehydrated by coffee. If you're drinking coffee, and I love coffee, you need to up your water intake immediately because it is a dehydrator. Same as alcohol. There's a lot of things that dehydrate us, and we don't like balance that out with anything commonly in our culture. Um,
So correct me if I'm wrong.
so
So
definitely,
I don't know if you've heard this, but in my research, I have read that both coffee and alcohol, on a molecular level, they block our bodies from uptaking, water properly. So like your body's not absorbing water as it normally should because of the way the caffeine and the way the alcohol interact with um, with our cells or what have you. And that's why, although there's lots of water in coffee and there's lots of water in beer, we're not taking advantage of that because of what it's doing, like that caffeine and what that alcohol is doing. And that's the reason why when you go to the bar or whatever, you're drinking with the boys, you're pissing, you're going to the bathroom all the time. You crack the seal, you're peeing every 5 minutes. And it's because
yeah.
it's
Don't
just
crack the seal.
don't crack the seal.
Yeah, I have. I'm not well read enough on that molecular stuff currently, but I do remember reading some articles in the past. Where were they from? I'll have to look that up, but you're right. It does change your molecular, like the way your body, your muscles are able to absorb that stuff, especially
Yeah.
alcohol. Um, Alcohol kind of puts the way it was explained to me was that alcohol kind of puts an armor coating on your organs and your muscles and some of the, like at the molecular level that prevents a lot of the nutrition and hydration stuff that you're doing from doing it as good as it should. Uh, but I would have to read up on that. I would believe it to be true, but I can't really get into the details of that
Okay,
at this
so
time.
we've talked about some pre-riding protocols. Um, Now let's get into quickly what we can do during the ride, and then maybe let's talk a little bit about nutrition and maybe even some sleep because that's also important.
Yeah, totally. Um, so we've already established minimum 6 liters
Yeah.
for any day that you're doing something really rigorous. And let's assume for a second that you were good and you spent the previous 5 days really loading that up. So you're starting your day full. When it comes to supplements, I'm always making little graphs and stuff. I think that there's kind of two ways you could go about honing this. Um, the professionals, and I'm talking very few people that I know, you could go get what's called a sweat test, where you can go to a lab, they put you on a spin bike, they make you sweat, they take a sample of your sweat, and they have you ever heard like someone be told that they're like a salty sweater or um, or like a clean sweater or like
Oh,
the composition of your sweat is different from person to person. Some people
okay.
have really acidic sweat.
I have heard that.
Um,
Yeah.
so right, so there it does exist to get a sweat test done, and that would ultimately be the most precise way to know what you need for supplementation. But I don't know anyone that does that. It's not available to everyone. It's not cheap. It's kind of like a top end thing, and we're not getting into that because it's just not feasible for a lot of people.
Right.
So the only other way that you can do that is by kind of learning your body and a bit of trial and error. Um, your supplements, I have a list of kind of some of the more popular supplements like BioSteel, Salt Stick, Gatorade, the VNDL one, the Vandal Project, Tailwinds, etc. And when you look at the nutritional information, some of them are like a sodium dominant one, which would be like Salt Stick. Some of them are like a potassium dominant one. Some of them are like a magnesium dominant one.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing that you could do, because you've probably also heard it's common in like running and like triathlon sports, of you never try something new on race day, right?
Yeah.
Because especially in endurance events, you want to know not just how is it gonna like work with you, that supplement, how is it gonna work with you performance wise, but also like how's it gonna sit in your stomach? Is it gonna churn things around? Nobody likes riding with a bad gut.
Yeah.
And if you're like doing a lot of running and stuff, you definitely don't want bad guts when you're running. So what I suggest for people is to find like locally a couple different supplements. One that's like um, um, a sodium dominant, one that's like a potassium dominant or a magnesium dominant, and just go out there and try it. Throw it in your backpack. If you're drinking 6 liters a day, I would say half of those should have electrolytes in them or a supplement in them. So one every second one, if you're doing it with a 1 liter bottle, like 1 liter plain, 1 liter supplement back and forth. Or if you're doing it in a Camelback, just split it the same way, kind of 50-50. Um, and and just recognize what it's doing. So like you had mentioned that salt stick really worked for you, right?
Yeah.
So I would presume that if you did a sweat test, which you probably will never do, you might find out that you're a sodium dominant kind of sweater. Um, so just play with it and find out. You need to find one that uh, gives you the best performance. So you've now learned you need like a potassium heavy one or a sodium heavy one or whatever, but you've also found one that sits well in your stomach, and that you can, maybe you need to travel with it. If you're going away racing or something, or one that you can get kind of locally. That's how I would start
That's
to
a
set
really
up for
cool.
success.
That's really cool. I mean, I didn't realize that there were differences to between those types of supplements where like one was a sodium dominant, one was potassium, one was magnesium. Because now that makes me want to go out there and maybe try some other of those supplements. One that might be more potassium dominant, and that might be more magnesium dominant. What you got there?
Can you see that?
You know what? This is recording in 1080. So like the finished
Okay.
product, the higher res. I can't really read that right now, mainly
Okay.
also because our screens are
So
small while we're recording it. But
this is uh, sodium, potassium, and magnesium
okay,
from reading it upside down. BioSteel, Salt Stick, Gatorade, and Tailwinds, and some other ones,
okay,
right? Just sodium alone, Salt Stick has like triple what BioSteel has in sodium
right,
and much more than Gatorade. But if you look down at potassium and into magnesium, those numbers are all different. And
yeah,
more is not necessarily better. And these numbers are calculated because what happens, and it's confusing, I know, to people that are just learning, but when you look on it on the back of a bottle at the nutritional information, uh, it'll say like per X amount of milligrams or X amount of grams, and this bottle is going to be different from that bottle. So it can be hard to know what the real differences are like per volume. So this scale of what I've done is all corrected to the same scale. It's
Okay.
not what the bottle says. I've gone and done the math to make them all equal per volume to
Gotcha.
see which one is best. I don't wouldn't expect everyone to do that. I'm just a nerd when it comes to this stuff. Uh, but basically, that's what you need to do is go find a one that is kind of more dominant than the other, or pick like your top, three or four that sit well in your stomach and don't cause any like issues there, and play with it. Just go get out there and do it. It's the same as the conditioning thing of riding for 10 hours or 12 hours and conditioning your muscles and your nervous system to not cramp during those. You can be doing that, conditioning that side of the house at the same time as playing with um, those kind of dominant uh, supplements.
So we've figured out what we need to do before we're riding. We figured out what is a good idea for when we're riding. Um, what about nutrition? Like uh, things we eat. That definitely has an effect.
Yep.
If your if your morning breakfast is like Tim Hortons donut and a double double, it's probably not going to go well for you.
J-Mill.
but
I
but
just love giving him a hard time.
yeah, if you're eating, a little better, chances are you're going to go a lot longer, a lot farther. So
Definitely.
what are your
You
some
know,
of your recommendations in that regard?
um, I love this topic because um, I, th- you know, I dive deep into nutrition and food. Um, and I think that, I mean, it's been proven time and time again that our culture in North America for everybody, um, it is our culture to eat a certain way, and that way is not good for performance whatsoever.
Yeah,
I think that from a performance standpoint, the vast majority of people in North America don't eat enough protein, um, whether you're working out or not. If you are working out and you're active, you're riding, or you're in the gym or whatever your sport is, we're looking at daily protein. Well, I mean, we can talk about like overall macro splits. Carbs, fats, and protein. Those are the big three that you're the macro ones you're trying to cover. Um, Protein, you're going to want the rule of thumb, and again, play around with this. Everyone's a little different, and everyone's stomach is a little different. Everyone reacts a little different, but the starting point for protein is 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day.
yeah,
So I'm 200 pounds. I need 200 grams of protein a day.
that's the main,
Um,
right? That's just maintaining.
I think that that's just a healthy performance, uh, like baseline. You'll start to tweak that as you go and you get more aware of your body and see it react to different things and different training scenarios. But the baseline, everybody typically in North America is eating a lot of carbs. It's a very carb heavy. It's tough to get good protein. It's expensive to get good protein, and it's not available everywhere you go.
This has been my
Um,
bugaboo for the past, I don't know, year or so, because so that has been my understanding as well. So I've been running with the rule of thumb that whatever weight that you are aiming to achieve or maintain. So in my case, in the height of training, I was at 177 pounds. That was my average weight, um, and it was healthy, right? Like I was lean. I was able to maintain the muscle mass, but 177 grams of protein it's harder than you might think it. Like in our typical diet, like an egg
Yep.
typically only has about 13 grams of protein or some, if you're lucky.
You way less.
Way less, right? It's
Uh, an egg, you're looking at 3 to 6.
okay. Sorry, I normally have two eggs, so that's where I came up with that figure. So
Right.
yeah, two eggs,
Yep.
you're looking at like 12, 13 grams if you're lucky. Nice big
Yep.
juicy eggs. Um, but then it's like, okay, uh, what's your typical steak? 20, 30 grams for like a 200, 300 gram steak, chicken breast, somewhere along those
Yep.
lines, a bit more, fish, whatever. Like it's all ballparky around that figure. And
Yep.
so I'm not even at 100 yet. And I'd say it's getting it,
Yeah. It's tough.
and you brought up a really good point of good protein, like properly sourced
Yep.
protein that's going to be good for you. It doesn't have anything in it. Like it's wild, man. And
It is. It's really tough to do.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
To achieve those numbers, and that's where supplements come into play. Supplements aren't necessary if like supplements are exactly what they're called. It is a supplemental device.
Yeah,
If you can get all your protein through a normal diet, good on you. But it's really hard to do. So, a protein shake with 25 or 30 grams of protein in it, that takes up a good percentage of your daily intake. It's they're usually pretty tasty, and you find one that again sits well in your stomach. They can be really helpful for that. But also what eating the proper amount of protein does. Like I've taught a lot of clients and had a lot of good success with kind of my hashtag prioritize protein. And that doesn't mean like, just like think about it all the time. It means if you don't focus on anything but hitting your protein macro for the day, the other stuff will fall into place.
mm,
You will immediately not eat as much carbohydrates. So you don't even have to track that number in the beginning. Again, just like my fixing a dirt bike, we start with the basic and we work to the complicated. The basic in nutrition is making sure that you're getting enough protein. And just kind of the knock-on effect to that is you're immediately more full. If you focus on that macro number, okay, I got to get in my 200 grams, my 150 grams of protein, you'll immediately bring down the level of carbs that you're eating without even tracking it at all.
yeah, 100%.
And and that's where when we talk about weight gain and weight loss, that's like kind of the carbohydrate department. So if you're looking to lose weight, people immediately go, I need to cut my carbs. And I say, no, like you need to up your protein. You
Yeah,
up your protein, commonly your carbs will fall into place on their own. And then you can get more specific. But again, working from simple to complicated, get your protein in order first, just like getting your hydration in order before, doing performance sports.
yeah. I mean, I would agree 100%. I mean, for me, we try and eat super clean. We I don't know if super clean is probably the right adjective, but we try and eat as clean as possible. A lot of like a Mediterranean based diet is where we sit. Um, but whatever carbs we do intake, try and make it like a high quality carb. Like an egg based
Yeah.
pasta, or lots of veggies, lots of green leafy veggies, lots
Yeah.
of kale. People like to
Because
hate on the kale because it's like a hipster vegetable, but fuck, it's good shit, man.
um, carbohydrates are mandatory. Like you have to have carbohydrates. That's what your brain works on carbohydrates. For like cognitive ability, you need carbs. It's just our our culture is kind of switched. We're extremely carb heavy and low in protein. If you focus on hitting the right amounts of protein per day, it doesn't mean cut carbs. It just you just got to work those ratios a little bit. So we're um, especially leading up to a big event like a big ride weekend, you're gonna want to have a lot of carbohydrates. You don't want to neglect that at all. So typically for performance sports, like like I've said, the 5 days before a big event, you want to be like uber hydrating.
Mhm.
I would say the 2 days before a big event, you want to be carb loading and get that fuel in your body already. Because again, you can't, during the day, you're on damage control. You're just trying to mitigate the inevitable burnout. You will hit the wall at some point. It's just how far out can you push that wall before you hit it. So, you've hydrated for 5 days, you've carb loaded for 2 days, you didn't stay up late boozing the night before, um, and you should have a pretty good day. And throw in a bit of electrolyte supplements, and you're rocking.
Okay, so we got pre-hydration, 5 days, 4 liters a day minimum. We got
Yep.
2 days before OVR, so that's what we're talking about. You're gonna carb load. You're gonna eat
Yeah.
lots of pasta. You're gonna eat lots of rice. You're gonna eat lots of bread. All the lovely things that you want to eat that you probably shouldn't. You're gonna eat all that stuff. You're gonna carb load up in advance. Um, you have a good ride, right? So we're feeling good. We've pre-hydrated. We didn't get on the piss. Uh, we've ate properly right up to the event, and we have a really good, we have a fantastic ride on Friday. What are some of the things we can do after a big ride to maybe talk about recovery? Like what are some of the things we can do to help us recover a little bit? Because even though you drank 6 liters of water after that ride, you're probably also going to need some replenishment. You're going to need to get those electrolytes in, regardless of how much you consume during the day. So,
Hmm.
drinking and eating and resting, and maybe let's also maybe before we get into that, let's talk real briefly about sleep as it applies to before and after as well.
Sleep's a big one, and it's complicated.
Mm.
Everyone had, just like kind of all things performance, everyone's very subjective. Everyone, um, their life is their scenario is set up in a way that either promotes or diminishes the quality of their sleep. And some people have, a lot of people, just like they have, a lot of people have sensitivities in eating and what their stomach can handle. People have sensitivities around sleep. Some people are kind of insomniacs, or you're just night owls that don't sleep well. Um, and there's a lot at play in what kind of drives that. And I know firsthand, especially having kids, and busy jobs and spouses and careers and just life and stress, sleep uh, is a really complicated thing. So I think it would be impossible for me to say like do this or don't do that when it comes to sleep. But what I promote is listening to your body and and taking a good look. If we're looking at our lifestyles now, like we're looking at our hydration, and we're looking at our nutrition, and we're trying to set ourselves up for success, you know, um, and we're already in the mindset of taking these kind of hard looks at our life. Um, do that due diligence for your sleep as well. You can wear a sleep tracker. Not everybody likes them. I wear one sometimes just to kind of play with it. I have sleep apnea personally, so my sleep is kind of all over the place. But I also have the ability to fall asleep immediately anywhere. I'm just kind of up a lot through the night, so it's just really complicated. So the signs that you're not getting enough sleep. Obviously, there's a lot of mood and complexion. Your eyes get dark and um, cranky and stuff like that. But also like not performing well on the rides. So these are all kind of signs that if your hydration is on point and if your nutrition is on point and you're still not performing well, this is when this sequential order we would start looking at that sleep. I've got one client athlete right now that's female who's pregnant, and her sleep is all over the place. And then I have another male client that just had a baby with his spouse. Um, and you've had babies, I've had babies, and sleep is like kind of take it wherever you can get it. Um, so I think it's just about understanding the bigger picture and doing what you can in your scenario to set yourself up for success.
Cool. Okay. So what about after a ride? After we've had this epic ride, body's shit canned because we just beat the hell out of it.
Mhm.
What's a good idea? What should we do? Should we be cracking a beer first thing and chugging that, or should we be doing something different?
Well, um,
I don't
I'm a
mean to
firm
be the police on this one, but I also just I want to be real as well.
I'm a firm believer in um in congratulating your body,
Okay.
like your mind. You know, it can't all be serious. Your body knows uh when it's being rewarded. And I think, again, our culture, we over reward ourselves, which is, how we end up on these carb heavy diets and the donuts and you know, all that stuff. Those are like little segments of congratulations, little pat on the back. So if you have had your shit wired tight with your nutrition leading up to that and your hydration leading up to that and you're going to the gym and everything's working good and you perform, um, you're, you know, like you are allowed to have a beer and or a piece of cake or something like that. You've burned a ton of calories. You
Yeah.
can usually afford it. Um, and honestly, you can go have a hamburger, like have some pizza, have some beers. When I was competing in like some other sports at like really high levels, we would absolutely do that. Go out as a team and crush some burgers and some steaks and not really care. Um, what I do say that you should do that most people don't do or would be resistant to doing is less from like a nutritional standpoint and more from like the fitness side is soreness and pain and like bruises and all those things. You probably know this from jiu-jitsu as well, but I would highly recommend which would be very uncomfortable the day after a big ride is to get on a bike, like not a dirt bike, but like get on a stationary bike, a spin bike, and spin for like half an hour or 20 minutes or an hour, whatever you
Or
can afford.
mm,
Recovery, to me, real recovery comes from blood flow, right? You want to wash, get things moving again, get the joints lubricated. It can be, and again, this goes back to what I said about the things you do when you're unmotivated are more important than the things you do when you are motivated, right? You were motivated to do that big ride, but the day after, are you going to be motivated to get on a spin bike and give it like, just like nothing rigorous, just like middle of the road, 30 minutes on a spin bike would do wonders.
Yeah.
for pain and all that.
Well, so I would 100% concur with that, and for no other reason than so I just went through a hernia surgery, and the method that I went through is a lot more invasive than the typical. So they cut you right down to the muscle fiber and they bunch all that up titanium thread and boom. So it's like a 7 inch
Yeah,
incision, and the recovery is longer, but you're encouraged to move. You're encouraged
yeah,
to stretch. You're encouraged, and to your point, getting that blood flow in there. Because if there's no blood flow, if you're stationary, there's no recovery. There's no healing. Now, sitting on
yeah,
the couch might feel a lot better because you're fucking sore and you're tired, but all
yep.
that lactic acid,
You're unmotivated.
all that shit in your muscles, it just needs to get worked out. You need to get some blood flow in there and then feed them what they need. So if you've had like a really
Yep,
great meal post ride or post workout,
yep,
then those nutrients need to get in there. And there's no better way than to get the
yep,
blood flowing.
yep. This is all, based on the fact that we've wired everything tight beforehand, right?
Back to you.
We've got our sleep under control. We've got our hydration. We've been diligent and disciplined throughout. We've done a big event. And hell yeah, you should congratulate yourself, have some fun, relax. It's not that strict, even at really high levels. Um, you're not, when you look at your macro splits over the long run of like proteins and carbs throughout your like a 2 week period, that one night of eating French fries and burgers and pizza isn't going to throw anything off by too far.
Yeah. Like you said, you're at
And
such
it feels good.
and you're at such a caloric deficit after a big ride like that
Yeah.
like you're just burning it. Like it's your
Like look
body
at
really taking those calories and like they're gone.
the look at Courtney Dauwalter. She's, I don't know if you know her that name, but she's the best female runner on the planet,
Yeah.
an ultramarathon runner. And her support team that supports her through these runs that are like 200 miles, 250 miles or more, her support team is literally going to McDonald's and buying Big Macs and French fries and meeting her at spots, and she's crushing those on the run, like during the run, because it gives her a little like it gives her the calories she needs.
Yeah.
She doesn't give a fuck about the macro splits.
Yeah.
She just needs to fuel and feel good. So she'll mix, like one stop will be McDonald's, and then the next stop they'll have like fresh made pancakes on a frying pan, like just eating pancakes. Um, it really doesn't matter at that point. Like, well, I mean, it does. Like, you need to fuel, but don't get all in your head about it. Just like, you know, um, respect the fact, that you are accomplishing something awesome. And, if you want that burger or whatever, go for it. But
So
then also get on a spin bike and spin that out the next day.
so just to be clear, when we're doing high exertion activities like riding the bike over hard terrain, running, whatever, etc., we're talking about we're not we're not worried about protein intake specifically during that evolution, during that activity. We're
Yeah,
worried about
I wouldn't
carbohydrates.
be.
Carbohydrates are the fuel. They're going to give you the glycogen. They're going to give you all that stuff.
Yeah,
You're going to burn that. So
yep,
for those that don't know, the fuel that your body uses uh, more often than not is glycogen. And it turns it into something called ATP.
yep,
That is the pure octane that your body uses to create energy. And we won't get into the hole that can get into, but carbohydrates will give you more bang for buck than protein will when we're
yeah.
talking
Especially your brain's operating on
pure glycogen.
carbohydrates almost
Yeah,
solely.
it takes up
Um,
the majority of the glycogen needs of your body.
so a good rule of thumb, another good rule of thumb, similar to what I said about protein, where you're looking at 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day. During uh, an endurance event, like something serious, like a 12-hour or 10-hour plus day, and you should, like everything else, you should have played around with this in other like training conditioning events. But the rule of thumb for an endurance event is 30 to 40 grams of carbohydrates per hour every hour of the event. So you're looking at like, say you have a banana and a muffin, or a bagel or prunes and raisins are and dates are super dense in carbohydrates. It's very easy to get that amount. But you also look at like the gels and the gummies. Those are all based, like if you buy the gummy blocks, or you look on the back of any of the gels, they're usually based on that theory of you're going to have one of those an hour. So they usually hover around 30, 40, 50, 60 grams of carbohydrates. So when you can count them very easily, if you know you're going for 10 hours, you throw 9 of them in your bag or 10 of them in your bag. Maybe you have one right off the gate. And then every hour when you're on your watch, it's very easy. Like, I need to fuel, it's that hour, 30 or 40 grams, maybe 50, 60. Again, play around with that to see how your body reacts and what's going to fuel it appropriately. But that's the rule of thumb for carbohydrates during the event.
Now, we have had this discussion in the past. Um, so there's carbohydrate supplementation, like you just mentioned, like the little gummy blocks and the gels. But there is also super starches that are out there. So so it's UCAN, UCAN supplements
Mm-hmm.
are one of these super starches, and it mixes just like Gatorade. And the difference between those and the carbohydrate based ones is this doesn't apply I don't think this applies very much to what we're talking about in terms of riding motorcycles in hard terrain, because our bodies aren't being pushed to the limit like an ultra marathon runner or a marathon runner, where we might feel the need to start downing those carbohydrate supplements, at a fast rate, and your GI tract can only take so much of that carbohydrate. And then that's when you see people
Yep.
puking at like marathons. It's not because they've run so hard they're puking. It's because they've intaked so many carbohydrates that their GI tract is like, no more. We cannot process this. Out. Somebody needs to get
Yeah.
out. And that's where the
Yep.
superstarches come into play. Is it bypasses that mechanism. And not only that, but the science behind it is you actually get more bang for your buck on a superstarch versus a carbohydrate in terms of glycogen and the energy it gives you. So for whatever volume of that superstarch you're getting, I think you're getting on measure uh, like if I think it's almost double the bang. So it's like 87 octane versus 97. Putting
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
I
And
don't know if
just
you
like the electrolytes, I think it's important to compare the packages. You find a few that you like, and uh, kind of see how they're broken down per volume. And if your superstarch can get you that 40 grams of carbohydrates in this much volume, that can be beneficial, versus another supplement that gets the same amount of carbohydrates, but it's like this much volume or whatever. Like one's like a big scoop versus a little scoop is what it comes down to in those supplements, and whether it's easier for you to do kind of one or the other. Like I had some of the guys that did Romaniacs last year that I worked with, when we were laying out their nutrition for the day in like little Ziploc bags. It was like, fuck, I can't carry this much. It's like, a huge stuff. So we just found supplements that were uh, like the way they were made is made them more dense, which is where that kind of comes in. So you're still getting what you need, but in different ratios or
Right.
kind of different volumes.
Cool. Okay. Well, listen, I think we've covered uh I think we've covered the range. I think we've covered from beginning to the end in terms of you know, hydration, electrolytes, nutrition, sleep. Um
Mm,
and I think we've given given the folks a lot of stuff to think on and to maybe research and get to grips with for their rides. Is there anything else you want to add to any of that?
um, no, I mean, I really think we covered a lot there. It's important to not get overwhelmed with it, and understand that the sequence is what's important.
Hmm.
Don't, my dirt bike analogy, don't jump to, "Oh, I need to focus on my ATP and I got to get my reps in at the gym and like get these really complicated programs when your hydration and nutrition is shit. Like sort it out one at a time and stack those wins. It's all about stacking mini wins, tiny ones consistently to get to that goal. Like climbing a ladder, the rungs are close together, not big grasps. So we start with nutrition, hydration, nutrition, sleep, and stress. If you don't have that together, don't start like hammering yourself in the gym because you're not showing up to the gym prepared in the first place and you're wasting your time. You think you're working out, but and admittedly, yeah, it's better than nothing, but kind of take a step back and just take a hard look at kind of a holistic approach of setting yourself up. And that way, when you go into the gym, maybe you can accomplish more in 20 minutes than someone that spends 2 hours if you're better prepared.
Yeah.
And just, kind of pick away at these steps to set yourself up for success for a big ride.
And I will add that what we just talked about in relation to riding um, also applies to working out in general. I mean, you could think of your workout
Mm-hmm.
in the gym as the same as going for a big ride. So all that shit we just talked about,
Yep.
pre-hydration, nutrition, recovery, all that stuff, sleep, that applies to working out as well. So to your point,
Absolutely.
if you don't have all this stuff in line, you're going to the gym, your results aren't going to be as good. So start with step
That's right.
one, like we just said,
Yeah.
drink a lot,
You're
eat
selling
properly,
yourself short, really.
yeah, get some sleep,
Yeah.
and just take care of yourself.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, dude. Well, that was awesome.
Yeah.
So,
If uh, if anyone
what's
has questions,
yeah,
nope, sorry.
yeah. If anyone has questions, where can they get a
If
hold of you?
I generally reside on Instagram, you can hit me up anytime on Instagram at thrashmotoco, or send me an email at thrashmotoco at proton.me, proton.me, thrashmotoco at proton.me.
Cool.
Or message John and the Valley Rally guys. They always know how to get a hold of me.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
And
Cool, man. So
maybe we'll
what's
see you
next?
guys soon.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to it. What's the next? We're going to talk about consistency next, right? That's the next one.
Yeah, we'll get more into like the actual like what you should be doing when it comes to like if you have got those things in place and now
Yep.
you have allocated X amount of time throughout your week, we'll talk about how to break that down and how to kind of capitalize on whatever time it is that you have. Maybe we'll talk about some different scenarios of like if you've only got 20 minutes or if you've got an hour or kind of like the common scenarios.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, stay tuned to that, folks. Hope you enjoyed this one. And yeah, we're
Yeah,
gonna
that's
keep
great.
rolling. This is good. I think it'll be helpful. We hope. All right. We're gonna end it
Owner,
here. Thanks for your time, Steve. Much appreciated. And yeah, so if
It's my
anyone,
pleasure, man. I'm honored, honestly, to be involved.
and if anybody has any questions for Steve or myself, you know where to find us. And yeah, enjoy.